Welcome to our official Playhouse TGS 2020 recap. I'm here with Tim.
Hey.
And Keith.
Hello.
So TGS is always a weird conference to talk about, especially us being from the West. In recent years, I haven't really kept up with it. This year's obviously like a little bit different with everything going on. It's sort of like an E3 situation where everything's sort of scattered. So we're going to try and hit everything we can in terms of what are the big highlights, what are the big talking points. Tim, you were sort of keeping up with everything live as it was happening. So tell us what do you think of TGS as on the whole this year compared to other years per se?
In all honesty, I think it's a big mess. I would say typically we get a much more condensed variation of TGS through just like some sort of big Sony presentation or something. Not the case this year. Sony didn't even show up to the best of my knowledge. And Microsoft showed up, but they kind of just dropped the ball.
Right. We'll get to Microsoft in a bit, but yeah, again, it feels weird this year. Like, again, I mentioned the sort of parallels to E3 in this case and other conferences. It feels definitely chaotic, maybe because Japan in general doesn't have like a Jeff Keighley type figure, you know, someone who like all these studios and all these publishers can band together around and sort of keep up to date with schedules and keep everything centralized. So yeah, hopefully they'll learn from this and try and make things a bit streamlined in the future. But yeah, it was weird just like sort of talking generally about what I saw. Obviously it's appealing towards the Japanese audience, so there'll be like certain things that just get lost in translation for me. It was interesting to see how the presentations are different, right? There's a lot more focus towards the developers and these characters that you know behind the scenes and them sort of interacting and bantering with each other. One of the Bandai Namco streams when they were talking about Sword Art Online, I think it was one of the voice actresses just had like a Muppet of her Sword Art Online character just the whole time. She never put it down. It was there the whole time. It reminded me of a lot of sort of that Japanese talk show feel to it where, everyone's hanging out, having a good time, and also here's some game footage.
That's very much what it is. It is Japanese television, down to the point that like you're not going to see any sort of critical breakdowns or anything. It's all going to be like super positive, fluffy speech. It's very much just like, oh, this is amazing. This is really cool. That's so cute. Yeah. Like, it's just... it's a lot of filler.
I heard a lot of kawaiis and sugoi. For a lot of it, it does seem like there were people there whose job... it's sort of like we joke about the Bethesda E3 conference where like this probably paid people to clap in the audience. Japan just seems to do that, but like it's all front and center. You know what's happening. It's just like,
it's not even like... It's not even that like they're paid to do that. That is just the culture of Japanese television is just stroking ego.
Right, of course. So we'll start off with one of the big dogs of the gaming world. We'll start off with Microsoft. Again, they sort of have tried to squeeze their way into the Japanese market. It's going to be hard because their two rivals, Nintendo and Sony, are Japanese companies by nature. And so, it's going to be harder for them to try and break in there and really make their presence felt. As far as I know, Xbox One sales have been picking up compared to previous gens. So they're definitely making headway. But yeah, one of the things I did think was interesting, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about from this, but one of the things I did think was interesting was the Series S is getting an immediate price drop in Japan. So it's like £25 cheaper, like $40 probably. So that's definitely like them.
I actually didn't see that.
No, it was like, I don't know if it was announced during their video presentations or whatever, but it was definitely part of it that they announced that. And so, yeah, that seems like a definite play to try and, pump up that value even more and get some Japanese consumers interested.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing I really saw was they're bringing a Japan update to Flight Sim, which looked really cool. It was cool seeing all the like big Japanese tourist spots, especially as someone who is planning a trip to Japan whenever the world gets back to normal. It was cool to like see all those sites and imagine myself being there in real life.
Yeah, well, and then they had the big Minecraft RTX presentation. Like, that was the biggest thing they actually brought to like their TGS presentation proper.
That was like 30, 40 minutes of the presentation, I think.
Yeah, no joke. Literally the entirety of Microsoft's presentation day one was just, okay, here's what Minecraft's going to look like on the new Xbox. And then aside from that, it was just intercut shots of Japanese developers talking about how great the specs are on the Series X.
Yeah.
Like, I literally cannot tell you how many times I heard through all the Japanese the words high spec.
But I guess, like, if I was in the head of Phil Spencer and the Microsoft team, right, I'd be trying to put my best foot forward there. And so, like, Japan is definitely a country that is associated with tech and new tech. And in terms of, like, games that they could have possibly brought, they don't have a Japanese studio, right? Until recently with the acquisition of Tango Gameworks along with the other Bethesda slew. Halo, I don't imagine is like a huge deal over there. So like, I'm trying to think like what games might have that sort of appeal that people actually care, and Minecraft seems universal. So like maybe that's what they were trying to think with that. But yeah, definitely no bombs. Definitely no bombs dropped here.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because the one Japanese bomb that Microsoft had, they've seemingly lost.
What is that?
Which was Phantasy Star Online.
Right. Mm. How have they lost that? Is that coming to PlayStation? Or
so I guess we can do a minor preview of what's coming in the Sega segments, because that's after Square Enix, which was after Microsoft. They have the whole Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis thing coming out. And marketing material for that has, as far as I have seen, has not actually listed the Xbox.
Interesting.
But it has listed the PS4 and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely a big selling point of one of their E3 presentations. I can't remember if it was 2018, but they were definitely trying to make this a big deal, like, hey, we're bringing this to the West, and it's Xbox you got to thank for it. So yeah, I wonder, do you think it's anything to do with, cause we can just like talk about Sega now and look back around to Square Enix. In terms of Phantasy Star stuff, I remember when that, is it New Genesis it's called or something? Yeah. When that was like first shown, I think your guys' initial reaction, and Keith's especially, was that this is like a realm reborn for Final Fantasy 14, but with Phantasy Star. Is that still the case? Is that the intention?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that like this is a complete overhaul of Phantasy Star Online 2, but at the same time, technically, I think it's really worth calling it Phantasy Star Online 3. Like, this is pretty much a new game that you can carry your Phantasy Star Online 2 data over to.
From what they've announced in on their forums and message boards and stuff like that is that you can freely transfer your stuff back and forth between each version.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
But they are completely different versions that don't have cross-play or anything like that.
But the original version of Phantasy Star will continue to exist and people can still play it, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as we can tell.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, so it's like...
And as I look at it, yes, it is coming to Xbox, but none of the marketing material for TGS said that from what I saw.
Yeah. I suppose, yeah, Phantasy Star Online was there for years without Xbox's help in Japan. And so, yeah, if this is for a Japanese audience, they don't really care about how it intends to release in the West. But, yeah, I don't know what the...
Yeah, though I can't remember if it actually released on consoles in Japan. I do... Yeah, so I think it released on PS4. I know it released on the Switch. But I do think it released on PS4 and a couple other platforms like the Vita and whatnot.
So Sega Shiro, you guys are going to have to explain this one to me. And like, I watched it. My initial impression of it is that it's just like a Sega commercial that's starring this guy that just says Sega at people.
So, this all starts back with Segata Sanshiro, who, as you see in those trailers, is his dad.
Yes.
So Sega Shiro's dad is Segata Sanshiro. The whole thing with that is, so I'm looking at it here just because I had to reconfirm dates. So it was in 97 and 98. It was all part of promotion for the Saturn.
That went well.
Yeah. These commercials actually did well because the guy who plays Segata Sanshiro, even in these new trailers, is Hiroshi Fujioka, who was the original Kamen Rider in Japan.
Okay.
And so anyone who knows a little bit about like Japanese TV history and how it has affected us is like Kamen Rider is what led to like other Sentai shows, which led to Power Rangers over here in the US, all that kind of stuff. You could basically look at Fujioka as like Japan's Red Ranger. So the whole thing was like, yeah, this was a parody of, I guess, a judo fighter. From a film named Sanshiro Sugata.
Okay.
So it was just nonsensical, crazy, kind of funny Sega ads, and the whole thing was that Segata Sanshiro was the protector of Sega. Well, the last trailer that he was in for the Saturn had him supposedly dying fighting somebody. And he hasn't been around since. Well, now for the 60th anniversary, they actually got Fujioka's son to come in and play Segata Sanshiro's son, Sega Shiro. And the whole thing is it's him trying to catch up to his dad to be a protector of Sega. And then his dad shows up as an evil villain to fight him and make sure that he's ready to protect Sega.
Man, that's awesome. Japanese advertising, man, is just on a whole nother level. It's something that, like, I was taking Japanese language classes last year before everything kicked off, and our teacher did show us this one line of commercials in Japan for, I think it was like a stick of gum or some sort of fruit stick thing, and it was just this like whole narrative that went on for like a long time, and it felt almost like a soap opera. And so, like, seeing that kind of stuff, it's just something you don't get as much over here. And I think it's really cool.
I think the closest thing we've gotten, I don't know if you guys have gotten it in the UK, but we get it in the US. I'm sure you've seen the memes about Jake from State Farm.
Yeah.
So they, like, actually kind of tried to continue that narrative eventually. where it was like a new Jake shows up and he's having like the same conversation about the khakis and whatnot, and he looks over at his coworker who is the old Jake from State Farm. He's like, "Do they ask you what you're wearing?" He's like, "Yeah, they do that all the time."
Yeah, that's good to see. Honestly, I didn't know Sega was a 60-year-old company.
Oh yeah.
The part of that really messed with my head is that it's Sonic's 30th anniversary this year. So Sonic has only lasted half as long as Sega, which is weird because those two seem so intrinsically linked in my head. But yeah, Nintendo goes in further back.
Because Sega, it's because Sega, just like Nintendo, started off as like a completely different thing from what we know them as today,
Right.
and they spoke to that during their presentation. They had a whole like, here was the very first piece of hardware Sega ever produced, all the way up to most recent stuff they've done. And that first piece of hardware was a jukebox.
It's really cool. Yeah, I was watching that, and it was cool seeing the guy go through like the whole legacy of Sega. And like the Space Harrier arcade machine was the first one that like moved your body with the game, and it was like, okay, you're really going into the weeds now.
Yeah.
We got some looks at other cool games. Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. That's always going to be a winner. I never actually got to play Puyo Puyo Tetris 1, so I'll probably jump on with 2. I know you said you wanted to try and battle me.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. We might do a stream or something for that.
Yeah, it'll be
Virtua
fun.
Fighters X Esports. I have no idea what this is, but I saw people tweeting about it.
So, this is a pretty big deal, just from the perspective of, so the main character of the Virtua Fighter series, Akira, they showed him, and from what everyone can tell, it was very much like a new rendering of the character. And so they're announcing this esports stuff for it, which also makes a ton of sense just from the perspective of, if I remember correctly, Virtua Fighter is either one of the top selling, if not it is the top selling arcade game in Japan. Like just I think it is just the highest grossing arcade game in Japan. But it was also the first 3D fighting game.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you think of your Dead or Alives, your Tekkens, your Soul Calibers, all of that stuff, none of that would exist without Virtua Fighter.
Yeah.
And there has not been a Virtua Fighter game in 16 years.
Why do you think that is? Because I'm a dumb Westerner. I don't understand why that series wouldn't continue if it was so influential and successful.
That I actually couldn't tell you. I'm not super well versed in the history of it because I picked up fighting games as a whole a lot later than that. I would imagine just non-global popularity.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It would find it maybe hard to sustain itself, but yeah. That's interesting. I always love to see like a classic franchise revived. So that's always cool to see. Forgive me if I'm on the wrong thing. Oh no, yeah, that's totally something different. Never mind. Forget what I said. We'll look back around now to Square Enix. The biggest thing I assume coming out of this was the announcement and showcase of Nier Replicant.
Yeah, so we've known about it for a while that they were doing a remake. We had not seen anything. From everything I've heard about the original Nier Replicant, though, so first off, we never got that.
Yeah. And so for a lot of people, their first Nier experience was Automata.
Right. Well, so it's weird. We got Nier Replicant, but it wasn't Nier Replicant. It was a game called Nier Gestalt.
Yeah.
And the whole thing there was that people thought that they would not like the brother-sister dynamic of Replicant in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided to make Nier Gestalt where it's a father-daughter dynamic.
Okay.
Between these two main characters.
Yeah.
And just generally across the board, like this wasn't even a US specific thing. The game played like garbage from every piece of testimony I've heard. And so just in general, watching this showcase, everyone that I was watching like reaction streams of, friends that were in calls with me at the time talking about it, like testament across the board was this just looks so much better, so much cleaner, so much more fluid to play.
Oh, it looks so great.
The only thing I saw was like the trailer. By the way, I know the guys behind this and Nier stuff love to like make things just like complicated and weird. Apparently this is called Nier Replicant version 1.22, a lot of other numbers.
Yes.
So I thought that was weird. I don't know what the joke is there on the inside or whatever.
The joke is Yoko Taro.
Yeah, right. He's the guy who I saw at this presentation with like moon head, right?
Yes, so that's the head of a character from Nier Replicant named Emil,
Right.
who also appears in Automata.
And so yeah, I watched the trailer, like the actual trailer, that just sort of like goes over these environment shots. For a lot of it, I didn't actually see a lot of gameplay, and so like it sounds way more positive than what you were saying about like the initial iteration of Nier Gestalt. And yeah, do we think that? Because again, like even if Nier Gestalt did exist, I from what I gather, a lot more people played Automata here in the West. Do we think this is something that people in the West that played Automata will be like, hey, I want to go back and play that now? Do we think those people will be excited by this?
Yes. And it's really funny because I have a friend that's getting really irritated at all of the marketing for Replicant because all of the marketing for Replicant is like the prequel to the hit game Nier Automata. And it's just like, no, Automata was the sequel to this game. It's not like they went back and made a prequel to Automata. No, this game already existed.
Yeah, that would bother me too.
It's not like the Borderlands pre-sequel.
Oh, God, don't get me started on that.
No Borderlands at TGS, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on who you are. But yeah. The other thing from Square Enix then was some Final Fantasy stuff that was today, I guess. Keith, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, apparently that dropped this morning.
Yeah, so I wasn't awake for it. I caught wind of it on my Twitter and some of my Discord feeds. But apparently Square Enix, Naoki Yoshida, the director for Final Fantasy XIV, had a panel today. And he talked about Final Fantasy XVI. And from what I heard, he kept hearing fans saying, oh, well, if Square Enix does a pre-rendered trailer for Final Fantasy XVI, the game's not going to come out until 2035. So he's like, well, I'm going to make a trailer that is all in engine. It's not going to be completely polished, but it's going to show that the game's coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
So the trailer we saw, 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah, probably 2 weeks, yeah.
2 weeks out, is all in engine.
Wow. I remember seeing a tweet shortly after that trailer from Jason Schreier saying, hey, this game's been in development for like 4+ years already, and it's coming out sooner than you think. Yeah. I have a bet going with John right now out that we made on Playhouse Live, wondering if 7 Part 2 or 16 is going to come out first. Where do you guys stand on that after this presentation?
16's first.
Oh, that's not good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 16 is first.
Okay. Yeah. It does look a little bit, well, like we've seen it, which is the big thing. We haven't seen any of part 2 for 7 yet, so like that's already a big step. But yeah, the fact that like they're committing to showing this in-engine stuff is definitely a statement of intent. So good to see.
Yeah, well, and another big thing that is potentially against 7 is head of development on that is Tetsuya Nomura.
Right.
Who is notorious for taking way too long to develop things.
Yeah. I know the feeling. Just like wanting to achieve perfection, and like rightly so with a game that so many people care about. But yeah, a lot of surprising hype for Final Fantasy 16 after that PlayStation showcase.
Yeah, well, and we got a rating drop for it too.
Okay, that's yeah.
We at least got the PEGI rating, which is 18, so it's an M-rated game.
Spicy, getting hot in here. Yeah, it definitely does look good. Like, even like John is excited, who's like, again, the typical, like, I heard the story so many times on Twitter after that, like, not a Final Fantasy guy, but like was excited about this trailer for whatever reason. So yeah.
Well, and I don't know that we've gotten a chance to talk about it yet, but like, we know who the combat designer is for that game. And it's an ex-Capcom employee who Square snatched up last year. Mm-hmm. And he was the combat director for Devil May Cry 5 and Dragon's Dogma over at Capcom.
I didn't know that, but like it totally makes sense now watching that trailer back. Definitely does look fast-paced. Yeah. Devil May Cry definitely screams in that trailer. For sure. Speaking of Capcom, I guess we'll move on to them next. They had 3 showcases over 3 days. Like,
and for all of that, not much was shown.
Right. The only thing I saw of it was like some of the Resident Evil 8 stuff, which again, this goes back to, I don't know if this is a TGS thing or a Capcom thing or just a 2020 thing, but there were some new snippets of gameplay in there, and like, if it was a Western show, there would be no talking, and there would just be like the game footage and nothing else. But like, they were insistent on talking over this and cutting to like people's computers and people sitting at a desk, and it was a little bit infuriating.
So I don't think there was anything like super new gameplay wise.
Right, but we haven't seen like anything basically, right? From Resident Evil 8, unless I just missed something. But like,
I don't know that we really saw anything here either.
No, there definitely were some. I could go back and try and like find it, but like there definitely were some like shots of like a few seconds of gameplay here and there. Maybe they just didn't have like the ability to do that like full E3 walkthrough yet, but there was some new stuff here. That I was just dying to see more of, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and there was... so I'm, like, super worried about this game.
Oh, really? Okay, tell me more.
Yeah. Because they have listed a 2021 release date for it. Mm-hmm. They haven't given even a window in 2021 yet, but they have listed 2021. And during the presentation this morning, they showed off the exact same thing again. So Friday, I think it was their initial showcase where it was like, hey, tune in for Monster Hunter Rise and Resident Evil 8. And the Resident Evil 8 section, both sections were basically just like, hey, we've got shows coming up in the next 2 days. Like, keep an eye out for those for more detailed information. And I think the Resident Evil presentation today had less information than the one on Friday did, and showed basically just another recut trailer of the same trailer we've seen like 2 or 3 other times already at other presentations. Mm. And then when asked if they could share any more details with them, there was very much a dodging of the question, and like it was just presented in a way that does not make me comfortable with the development of this game and the progress that it's potentially making.
Right. Do you think then, again, this is just another way of framing the Final Fantasy 7 versus 16 thing, do you think then it's likely that this game might get bumped and Resident Evil 4 remake, we haven't even had the official announcement yet, but that might creep in on the 2021 slot?
No, I don't think we see Resident Evil 4 remake at this point till this game is done.
Okay.
And the only reason I say that is because people will sometimes question why Capcom and like Division 1 at Capcom did not handle the Resident Evil 3 remake. People will question that a lot. I'm pretty sure I can tell you why, which is 3 is nowhere near as much of a beloved game as like 1, 2, or 4 is. And 1 already got its remake, even though it wasn't in this same modern remake style. But 2, they definitely had Division 1 handle that. But then 3, they just kind of outsourced both parts of it, both the single player and the multiplayer, to just smaller studios that are subsidiaries of them. And 4 was the game that changed Resident Evil and made it even more popular than it was already. Because, I mean, Resident Evil was already popular by the time 4 came out, but 4 really blew up. So with how big that game is, they're not having a subsidiary team handle it.
Right. Yeah, again, a lot of the stuff shown seemed to be a lot of the stuff we've already seen, the storybook stuff, the walk through the snow in the dark stuff. So yeah, I guess probably a little bit of a wait before we find out more about that game. Some Devil May Cry 5, special edition stuff. I'm guessing they were showing off some virtual gameplay here.
10 seconds.
They showed off, literally like 10 seconds with a countdown. I guess they just don't want to show off too much of it. They showed off more of the other features, which are the turbo mode, which is, for those that aren't super familiar with DMC, it's playing the game at 1.2 times speed.
Like a podcast.
So it is
like a lot of people do a podcast, so let's stay at 1.5 times speed.
So it is literally just an overclock basically on the game.
Yeah.
Makes the game a lot snappier, a lot faster. Things that had a tight timing become near impossible timings, depending on what you're talking about and how good you are at the games. But then they also talked about all the things that's going to come with the special edition, which is like all of the original bonus DLCs for DMC5. They talked about the new Legendary Dark Knight difficulty, which in general, the PC player base is very irritated with Capcom that this game is only coming to PS4. The only
PS5.
thing, not PS4, PS5. The only thing coming to PC and previous gen is Virgil as a DLC later. The rest of the special edition stuff with Turbo Mode and Legendary Dark Knight Mode is exclusive to PlayStation 5 and Series X.
Yeah. Definitely a weird... again, people are figuring out next gen and what special editions and remasters means. This sort of is in the same caliber as Spider-Man remastered in my head in terms of like weird next gen smart delivery nonsense. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they've had any actual smart delivery for it, though. I think they've confirmed basically that, like, you just buy special edition.
Yeah. Just straight up. Monster Hunter Rise, then. Do you want to keep going?
Yeah, there was one more thing I was going to say. they did show off the legendary Dark Knight difficulty. And the big thing with that and their reasoning for why it wouldn't run on modern hardware is we're still talking about the RE engine, which is like super high fidelity when they want it to be, and DMC5 is definitely on that spectrum. And it loads like 50 enemies at a time.
Yeah.
Compared to like the maybe 10 at a time of the original game for big encounters.
Cool. You'll love to see it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Monster Hunter Rise then. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Is this the first Monster Hunter game on Switch?
No. So we had Generations Ultimate before this.
Right. It seems super weird in my head that there wouldn't be already a Monster Hunter game by now on the Switch.
Yeah.
And like my head rationalized it by saying, well, Monster Hunter World was still being supported, whatever. But like, yeah, that's just as successful as Monster Hunter was in the 3DS. Switch makes perfect sense. And so like that audience is going to eat this up.
Oh, well, they are going to.
Yeah, they're going to.
They're really going to eat it up, namely because it's a love child of Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Mm-hmm. So it's that blend of classic old school with the new school additions onto it. From what I've seen, everything's going to end up being very peachy.
Yeah, I can tell you that this game is going to set the standard for Monster Hunter going forward.
Whoa. Big talk. Yeah, cool to see. And then Street Fighter V had some updates. I don't know what they are. Tim, do you know? You're the fighting game guy.
So the big thing was just the release, or well, not the release, but the showing of a new character. We knew who every character except one was for this new season that they're doing for Street Fighter V. So they showed off the first of those characters, which is Dan Hibiki. So returning character. His whole thing is he's a SNK parody. So SNK has their like King of Fighters series. Dan is entirely meant as a parody of that, down to the point that he actually has like straight up moves copied from SNK characters, like super blatantly. And his whole thing is have you seen Napoleon Dynamite, Finn?
Yes.
He's the martial arts dude from Napoleon Dynamite.
Okay.
Like that is what Dan is. Dan is the shady martial arts teacher who has his own made up style that he teaches people and then goes out and taunts people and gets his ass kicked.
Yeah.
Like that is what Dan is as a character, and people have been waiting for him to come back. So yeah, they showed off a little bit of Dan. That was pretty much it for the most part, though.
Very cool.
I don't think they showed off any sort of new mechanics that I can remember at the moment.
Yeah. The only thing I know about Street Fighter V recently was the free game on PS Plus. And usually in my head, that signifies, like, if it's an old game, I would go, hey, they're trying to, like, work up to the reveal of Street Fighter 6, but I guess they're still supporting this game for a little while yet.
Till the end of 2021.
Right. So, yeah, not ready to show off any Street Fighter 6 stuff. So, yeah, cool. That game's still being supported.
Yeah, well, and we've heard that the reason 5 is still being supported is actually this might have been an emergency season that they're producing.
Oh, wow.
Because the rumor is Street Fighter 6's development fell behind a bit, so they just were kind of like, quick, get something out and keep attention on Street Fighter 5 while we finish 6 still.
Yeah, who knows, Dan might not have made it. So yeah, that's it for Capcom. One of the things I forgot to mention when we were talking about Square Enix, and I don't think this was any official Square Enix thing, again, talking about like developers and different entities just doing their own reveals. But this is technically a Square Enix game, Balan Wonderland. Are any of you familiar with this?
Yes, the one that's basically Nights into Dreams.
Right. Headed up by the people who used to run Sonic Team. They're basically, yeah, it feels like sort of a weird mashup in my head between Nights into Dreams, A Hat in Time. The music is like dare I say, a rip-off of Mario Odyssey. Like, it's so close if you listen to those trailers. It's, like, not even funny. But, yeah, that's, like, one of the things out of this show that I was like, yes, that's a game for me. And I'll totally pick that up. It does look a little bit rough at this stage, so I don't think we're going to see... I don't know. It's slated for March next year. So
yeah, I think they'll push it out regardless. But yeah, the consensus across the board from everything I've seen is, yeah, this game looks a little rough.
Yeah. And I definitely have a high tolerance for jank, so I'm probably going to jump on that game anyway. So yeah, good on them. But now it's time to talk about Cygames.
Yeah. So
I don't touch Shadowverse, so this is all you guys.
So I don't really play it. I have a friend that plays Shadowverse, but Shadowverse was basically just another game that was added in to the ring with things like MTG Arena for Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, Hearthstone, all of these like digital trading card games now. And it's been around for a while. But then in the past year, I think it got an anime. And so now they're making a Switch game based off of the anime.
Cool. So is it still a card game, or is it more of a...
Yes. So, and like if you watch the gameplay presentation from their show here at TGS, it's very much a Hearthstone thing.
Okay.
The only other things that we saw out of them, which was kind of expected, so Cygames are the developers for Grand Blue Fantasy. We just saw like a trailer to remind people that season 2 of Grand Blue Fantasy Versus is happening right now.
Cool.
But yeah, Cygames didn't show off a ton. Their presentation mainly revolved around Shadowverse. They had the voice actors there playing the game, all that kind of stuff.
And then Konami, this was something we talked about a little bit in Playhouse Live as well this week. Shadow dropped Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, the original Metal Gear, and the Contra and Castlevania collections all on GOG. And yeah, slightly enhanced visuals, but still the original ports from the early 2000s. Cool thing to have. Those games didn't exist forever on PC, now they do.
Yeah, well, so the only problem with it is that these ports, like we said, were ported back to they were ported to PC back in 2000. They have run into the same kinds of issues as the Silent Hill 2 port, and that is just like there is all sorts of bugs and inconsistencies with inputs and whatnot. I think Silent Hill has a patch, and I know Metal Gear Solid 2, they had to make like a fan patch as well. So that's what you're getting into if you buy these games, is you're getting into you're going to be modifying this game with fan patches yourself to actually make it play well.
Yeah, which is better than nothing.
Yeah.
And then Eden's Zero game, based on the manga by creator of Fairy Tail. This is, again, something for you, Tim.
So, I just recently, with a friend, read like the beginnings of the Eden Zero manga. I dropped Fairy Tail so long ago.
Yeah.
But they're doing 2 versions of the game. They're doing a actual like proper consumer version for like consoles and whatnot, and then they're doing a mobile version. From what I can tell, it's your pretty standard fare, like, action JRPG anime game. It's like your One Piece World Seekers and your Dragon Ball Xenoverses and all of those kinds of games.
Which will always make money for the people who care.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I also tried Fairy Tail at one point, but yeah, I also dropped it very early in.
I finished it, but I don't want to know that I finished it.
Yeah,
Erase that memory.
it was one of those things where I just heard it finished, and I like went and caught up on like the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I can see why the fan base might not be satisfied with that ending.
Mm-hmm. Koei Tecmo game. Koei Tecmo games. Probably the biggest thing out of them was the showing off Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. Just like, this is super cool to see. This totally makes sense as a game. I think it's going to sell well. I think it's indicative of Nintendo's broader strategy to either have at least like one Mario or Zelda game every year, and then also to try and have like a first party or a big title every month for the Switch. And I think they're getting really, really good at that and really consistent, even more than Sony, I'd say. Sort of dropped the ball with like some titles coming out a month apart and stuff. But yeah, the gameplay for this looked super, super good. I never played the original Hyrule Warriors games, but I think I might try this one. It depends on what's like out around the time that comes out.
Yeah, well, and that's coming out this year, so...
Yeah. I tried to pick it up for my Fantasy League. John bid all his money to get it before me.
This Fantasy League is getting out of control.
Just wait till you guys get in. It's going to be wild. You're going to pick up some like weird JRPGs that I've never even heard of and that score a 90, and it's going to be nuts.
Oh, you mean like Atelier Ryza?
Shh. Segue. I don't know what that game is. So yeah, it's a perfect example.
This is a me game.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Atelier series is a long-running series, like not as long as Final Fantasy, but it's a long-running series. You basically play an alchemist who saves the world by creating items. You know, You go out and gather some mushrooms and a prickly pear, and you make a bomb.
Mm-hmm.
So it's stuff like that. They're more. The Ryza series has been, from what I played, a little bit more slice of lifey. So there's not really any world-ending events that I have gotten to so far in Ryza. Granted, I'm 8 hours in and still in the tutorial.
Damn JRPGs, man.
But Ryza was really popular, and one of the reasons why it's a great game, but the main reason why Ryza is so popular is because of the main character. Specifically her design.
Okay. So what you're saying is it's Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
For me, Sonic is a character is a franchise that gets by off of the appeal of the design of the main character. Is the comparison I was trying to draw there. I'm sure the main character is not actually a hedgehog.
Yeah, no, I think you're looking more at a Dead or Alive or SNK's situation with Mai Shiranui.
Got it. So like sexy Sonic the Hedgehog.
You mean Rouge the Bat?
I think most of the fan base for the Atelier Ryza games would abide by the motto. I think it's thick thighs save lives.
Okay, all right, okay, settle down. You said this is a long-running series. Why is it called Atelier Ryza 2?
Yeah, you can take that one, Naki.
So, the Atelier series have different main protagonists. So, a previous one would be Atelier Sophie. So she would have a couple games that's titled Atelier Sophie, the blank and the blank blank. So this one's like Atelier Atelier Ryza 2 and something in the Secret Fairy.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I get it. Just how long has the series been going? Because like I feel like I'm quite tuned into like long running series like that. Like I even know what Legend of Heroes is, and I've only played like half of one of those games.
1997.
Yeah, 97.
Well, okay.
Back on the
And so,
original
like,
PlayStation.
what was it released? Oh, PlayStation, right? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that was a console for RPGs. So yeah, cool to see that. And yeah, that was some Dynasty Warriors 20th anniversary stuff. Some like teases towards more Dynasty Warriors.
Yeah, so
for now it seems
we got a straight up teaser trailer for Dynasty Warriors 9 Empires.
yeah. Which is a lot considering, like, I thought they wouldn't even talk about Dynasty Warriors until Hyrule Warriors was out. I thought that would be the main focus right now, but yeah, there's, like, the Dynasty Warriors fan base is definitely really hardcore to when it comes to those games, so yeah, it's cool to see them get some love as well.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the last big publisher, Bandai Namco, probably the biggest takeaway for me out of that is like some more look into Scarlet Nexus, which I think was really cool. That's something that caught all of our eyes. I think it was at a Microsoft show.
Yeah, initially.
Yeah. And sort of like caught all of our eyes because it looked weird and funky and sort of... it sort of reminded me, just art style-wise, it's not by the same people, I think, but I was playing AI The Somnium Files this past year, and just some of the vibes in that trailer reminded me of that, so I was like interested for that reason. But yeah, it seems like they're bringing in an English voice cast and the whole works for this, so it might be something I pick up. I don't know, but it looked cool in the trailers.
So I'll always caution people when it comes to Bandai Namco's action games. Just because they can get a little messy and also pretty repetitive. But from what my friend said, so my friend is much more involved with keeping up with that game than I am. He said it's basically Bandai Namco's take on Astral Chain, but with Nier Automata combat, with some of Silver the Hedgehog's mechanics from Sonic 06 put in.
Those hedgehogs keep coming back into the discussion somehow. But yeah, that sounds like a cool concept at the very least. But yeah, like you said, caution. And then a new Sword Art Online game. That series is still going strong. I know you've talked about, Tim, you've been watching the anime and sort of keeping me in the loop about that. Do these games ever turn out well? Like, are these games beloved as much as the series is?
The games are bought by people who like the series. The games do not always receive the best reviews on Steam. I would say there have been 2 or 3 games that people actually appreciate out of like a whole plethora of releases. A lot of the ones that people don't appreciate as much are things that have been ported from like the PlayStation Vita, though.
Right.
So this new one, like Horus, it's already out. I've played it. Haven't played too much because I've been waiting for a friend to catch up so we can do co-op through it.
Okay.
But like catching up means getting through the prologue of the game, which is like 20 hours. So
I don't know how you guys play these games. Where do you find the time?
I don't.
So and the funny thing is that friend caught up to me very recently, actually, because he didn't have to do the final fights of the prologue because they finally released a patch for the game. And part of that patch was like, hey, do you want to just kind of skip over all of this crap?
Nice.
Because it's literally just the story of the anime. And then after that prologue, you get into like the game's own original story.
Cool.
So yeah, they showed off, I think it was 2 pieces of DLC for this. Unfortunately, I don't fully understand Japanese, so I didn't catch everything that's going on with the story in these.
Right. And then the other thing that was a Bandai Namco game, but not really announced as part of the TGS stuff, was the new Tekken character to start off Season 4 of Tekken 7.
Yeah. So this character, Kunimitsu, legacy Tekken character, basically a ninja who always wears a fox mask. And in previous
I
games,
assume, based on my limited knowledge of Tekken, he's some relation to Yoshimitsu.
she, if I remember correctly, does have some relation. I can't remember if it's that Kunimitsu is wife or daughter.
I think it's daughter.
But the whole thing with this is never took her mask off. Big thing with this trailer was she took off the mask as she's fighting Yoshimitsu. She beats Yoshimitsu, takes off the mask, and says, "Mother, I finally did it." And so that's because this Kunimitsu is the daughter of the original Kunimitsu.
Oh.
So, same character, different character.
Yeah. This is another one as well where I'm like, same with Street Fighter 5, I thought they would have been sort of bridging into Tekken 8 hype by now, but I guess, yeah, and again, the community is still strong. They're still going strong with 7.
Yeah. I'd say this one is much more they just want to work on this for now. Street Fighters I can see being kind of a quick grab to stall for 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tekken 7 is still going very strong. The only thing running against it is the same thing that's running against a lot of fighting games right now, which is problems with netcode.
Yeah.
A lot of fighting games nowadays are still using what is called delay-based netcode. And that is a lot of what people are probably used to seeing, where if there's an interruption of your connection, if there's packet loss, whatever, it causes your game to stall for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And that works fine for shooters because in a shooter, things start back up and you can immediately course correct.
Yeah.
Whereas for fighting games, a delayed input, like all of a sudden just getting delay put into your game, makes you drop your combo.
Okay.
So fighting games have been moving towards an alternative called rollback netcode, which is basically the game keeps some buffer frames behind and ahead of like where things are actually in the game state. And it does this so that if there's packet loss, it can at least do some predictive movement. That way you as a player can still do things like you're playing on just your local machine and not drop your combos. And then when the connection reestablishes itself, it corrects the state of things according to what happened on both players' ends between the server.
Got it.
So lots of complaints recently about that with fighting games across the board, and Bandai Namco is particularly, I guess some people would say particularly egregious when it comes to the netcode.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball FighterZ, Soul Calibur, Tekken, none of them are games that people really enjoy the netcode on, to the point that people prefer to play over services like Parsec.
That's funny.
And Arc System Works developed Dragon Ball FighterZ, and they're developing their new Guilty Gear game, Guilty Gear Strive, right now. And they were initially developing that with delay-based netcode, and people just screamed their heads off at them, and now they're doing rollback. The whole thing with rollback, though, is you have some development experience, Finn, so as you could imagine, if you build a fighting game or a game around a particular type of netcode, like delay-based, and then you're told, put in rollback, well, rollback involves adding a system to keep buffer frames and predictive movement. That means you have to gut the game and rebuild it from the ground up.
Yeah, that's like, yeah.
So they can't really do that.
Basically.
So that's why Arc System Works was able to do it. They were just starting development on Strive, so they were able to actually implement it. But the best we can get with Tekken is netcode improvements, and Harada, the head of development, has said that they have made some significant improvements. They've had people who are known names in the fighting game scene and the Tekken scene testing it West Coast to East Coast, West Coast to Japan, all these different kinds of connections, and they've said the connections are surprisingly good with this update they're doing for Season 4, so people just need to hold off and wait for that. It won't be the best solution, but it will hopefully make the online experience more bearable.
All right. So yeah, that's it for Bandai Namco. There are two more things that should be mentioned before we're done wrapping up here. Weren't technically part of any TGS official stuff, but happened around the same time. So like, I feel it's okay to mention them here. Number one, Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory getting a playable demo in mid-October. Hooray.
Yeah.
We stand demos. We like demos.
Yes, especially with a game like this, because I have no idea how this game works control-wise.
Yeah, I tried to grasp it from some gameplay footage I see, and I'm just like, what's happening? Is it like Parappa the Rapper? What is happening?
Well, and like, so you have the game, like you have like the Miku rhythm games. Super intuitive, because it's literally just like press the button that matches the button, like press triangle, square, circle, the D-pad buttons, whatever. Like it tells you the button to press. Whereas Melody of Memory, I see like the triangle button pop up every once in a while, but other than that, it's like, am I doing a single button press to have all three characters attack? Am I just pressing the same button over and over again? Like, I have no idea what that game's doing, so that demo is going to really clear up what this game is going to be.
Right. And then the other thing was Resident Evil, or I guess since we're talking TGS, Biohazard Infinite Darkness coming to Netflix, starring Leon and Claire. Did you guys see this trailer at all?
So something funny about that. I didn't mention it during the Resident Evil section here. They did show it at TGS.
Oh, did they? Okay.
They showed it.
I thought it was just a Netflix tweet.
So they showed it this morning. And the really funny thing is they showed it this morning saying that it was the world premiere of this and that nobody had seen it.
Okay, yeah. I guess, yeah, the first time I saw it was the leak, or if you want to call it that. I was surprised I didn't know this was just going to be like a CG show. I thought maybe it was going to be some sort of more animated take on it, like hand-drawn or whatever you want to say about it. Sort of more like Castlevania, but this just looks like some straight out of Resident Evil cutscenes, as if it was out of like a remaster or something.
Yeah, that's par for the course. I was more surprised that it's a series.
Okay. You thought it was a movie?
Yeah, because they've done a number of CG Resident Evil movies at this point, like I think it's like Degeneration, Damnation. Like they have a ton of CG Resident Evil movies at this point.
And so, like maybe you'll have a little bit of insight into this. Then I was like, they were very picky with what they showed. There was very little like facial movements and talking between characters in this little teaser. And that was the one thing where I was like, okay, you can make these environments look pretty good with lighting and stuff. Can you make these characters not look dumb since they're CG cutscenes, essentially?
They've done a pretty good job with it in the past.
Okay.
I watched Degeneration when I was like a kid. And I remember that was not terrible animation-wise. The story is always up for debate, but...
Yeah.
Animation-wise, I don't think these movies have been terrible. So I'm excited to see what they do with a series and how they can maintain consistency.
So that's a wrap on everything TGS for this year. I wouldn't call it a success. And maybe that's like full of it coming from me because I'm not Japanese and it's not for me, this show, but I normally feel like whenever TGS rolls around, there's at least like a few headlines that really catch my eye. This time, nothing. And from your guys' perspective, it did seem like you wanted to like watch and keep up with everything live, but it just was difficult to say the least.
Yes. Scheduling was a mess of everyone having their own thing that they wanted to do at the same time as everyone else.
Yeah. And so again, maybe there needs to be like a Jeff Keighley-esque figure that unites all these publishers and says, hey, here's how we're doing this.
Get to it, Kojima.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know what things will be like next year. But yeah, that's it for us. We'll do more reactions in the future as they come up. Let us know if you like this sort of format for like a TGS rather than like doing reactions to every live stream, which would be simply impossible. We decided to do just a general recap this time. So let us know if you wanted us to do more of that. And yeah, you can follow us on our various social media at EnterPlayhouse on Twitter, entertheplayhouse.com for all our written stuff. On Twitter, I'm at hyphenated. Tim, plug your Twitter.
It is Oiryx, Oyryx, but it's a 0 instead of an O because someone took my name.
And Keith, your Twitter is?
At the Serpent's Tail.
All right. So yeah. You can follow us all there, and we'll see you for the next one of these that ends up happening. All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.